The power of the English monarch has changed dramatically over the years. While some regents successfully ruled over multiple countries, others were so incompetent that they were forced to abdicate. The definition of power is relative to the time, and although England has technically been a constitutional monarchy since 1688, the royals still have more power than most. Let's explore the top 8 most powerful monarchs in English history. King Aethelstan, 927 to 939. Aethelstan was the first king of all England. Before Aethelstan, England was made up of various Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. Aethelstan was elected king of Wessex and Mercia after the death of his father, Edward the Elder, in 924, and was crowned at Kingston-upon-Thames, which is on the boundary of the two kingdoms. He wasted no time in aggressively expanding his rule, conquering the Viking kingdom of Jorvik, now known as York, in 927. Aethelstan then met with the King of Scotland and the leader of other northern kingdoms, who accepted him as their overlord. He was also able to subdue some of the Welsh kings, who agreed to pay him an annual tribute of 25,000 oxen, plus silver and gold. Along with the elimination of Cornish opposition, Aethelstan became the first true king of England. Not content with just the British Isles, Aethelstan forged ties with mainland Europe. He married his half-sisters to European royalty, including the Holy Roman Emperor Otto I. Alongside strategic marriages, Aethelstan developed alliances by sending military aid to Norway, Brittany, and the Franks. Despite his aggressive expansion, Aethelstan was not a bad king. He put in place many laws to punish corruption, suppress theft, and provide provisions for the destitute. 2 years before his death, 3 of the kingdoms under Aethelstan's control rose against him. The King of the Scots, Constantine, allied with Olaf, the King of Dublin, and King Owain of the Northern Britons. However, Aethelstan defeated his enemies at Brunanburh, securing himself his final victory before he died in Gloucester on October 27, 939. Rex Dotius Britannia, King of all Britain. Cnut the Great, 1016 to 1035. Otherwise known as Cnut, he was born in the 990s to the King of Denmark and a Polish princess. When Cnut was in his teens, he accompanied his father on a full-scale invasion of England, but he could not hold on to the conquered lands after his father's death in 1014. A year later, he returned to England in ships so bedazzled they seemed to onlookers to be made of fire rather than wood. After many raids and battles, Cnut was victorious on October 18, 1016. He made peace with the English king Edmund Ironside, and they divided the kingdom between them. However, Cnut was left as the sole king when Edmund died just 6 weeks after their truce. Cnut paid off other Viking invaders, and the raids substantially diminished. After Cnut's father died, Cnut's brother, Harold, took over the rule of Denmark. But when he died without an heir around 1018, Cnut was able to add Denmark to his newly forming empire. In 1028, he became king of Norway by bribing Norwegian landowners to oust the current king, Olaf II Haraldsson. Then, according to a manuscript in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, he received the submission of 3 Scottish kings between 1027 and 1031. At the height of his power, Cnut was the most powerful ruler in Western Europe, second only to the Holy Roman Emperor. William the Conqueror, 1066 to 1087. William was the Duke of Normandy, and he was related to Cnut through Cnut's second marriage to Emma, who was the sister of William's grandfather. William steadily gained power in France, much to the chagrin of the French king, and was allegedly recognized as the successor of his first cousin once removed, King Edward the Confessor of England. When Harold Godwinson took the English throne in 1066, it prompted William to take England by force in probably the most famous invasion in English history, the Battle of Hastings in 1066. William founded the Norman dynasty, ending the Anglo-Saxon era. He is seen as one of the most influential figures in English history. His legacy led to future English kings claiming the combined title of King of England and France, and set in motion events that would lead to the 100 Years' War. His reign transformed the English language, art, literature, and architecture. Many Norman castles still stand in England today. Henry V, 1413 to 1422. After his father became king in 1399, Henry was made the Earl of Chester, Duke of Cornwall, and Prince of Wales. Shortly afterward, he was also made the Duke of Aquitaine and Lancaster. Henry ascended to the throne on March 21, 1413, and set his sights on territories in France. The Hundred Years' War was in full swing, and Henry was determined to expand the English rule. He launched an invasion of France in 1415. England became one of the greatest powers in Europe after his success at the Battle of Agincourt, when he was able to defeat the large French army with his relatively small invading force. After several campaigns in France, Henry was recognized as the heir to the French throne in 1420 and married Catherine, the daughter of the French King Charles VI. Unfortunately, his success did not last long, and Henry's quest for power was thwarted when, in 1422, he died of dysentery, leaving his infant son as regent and paving the way for a civil war in England. Elizabeth I, 1558 to 1603. England was a major European power in politics and commerce during the Elizabethan Age. By this time, England had a government alongside the monarchy. However, Elizabeth still wielded plenty of power. No law could be decided without her permission, and she chose when Parliament would sit and what they would discuss. Under her reign, she gave her royal permission for colonizing North America, although she did not allow any funding for these high-risk ventures. One ultimately unsuccessful colony was set up on Roanoke Island, named Virginia, by Walter Raleigh in honor of Queen Elizabeth's moniker of the Virgin Queen. These were England's first tentative steps toward the British Empire. Elizabeth was a skilled diplomat and brought her country relative religious peace. Although many hoped for a strategic marriage, Elizabeth was able to strengthen a country that was isolated and weak upon her succession without submitting herself to any man. She used the prospect of marriage to her advantage, keeping suitors negotiating for her hand for years. Under her reign, Spain's invincible armada was defeated, and effective long-range weapons were introduced into naval warfare. Compared to some of her predecessors, as Queen of England and Ireland, she was perhaps not as powerful as other English monarchs. Still, she certainly took her kingdom from a position of weakness to one of power. By staying single and creating a cult that held her as the Virgin Queen, it seemed as if she was wedded to her country. Her power and successes were reflected as the power and success of England itself, rather than as a personal power. James I, 1603 to 1625. When James succeeded Elizabeth, he was already the King of Scotland, thus uniting Scotland and England under a common rule. He styled himself as the King of Great Britain. He wanted to rule a united kingdom instead of being the King of England, Scotland, and Ireland separately. Unlike his predecessor, he advocated royal absolutism and didn't want Parliament to be able to meddle in his affairs. To be clear, the Parliament at this time was far from democratic and instead was made up of unelected nobles. But James felt that being king was a divine right, and that since God appointed the rightful king, his power should be unchecked. His conflicts with his government came to a head when he dissolved Parliament in 1611. During James's rule, the English began colonizing America, naming their first permanent settlement Jamestown in his honor. James I met several people from the Powhatan tribe during his reign, including the famous Pocahontas. It could be said that James was the first British monarch to wield any real power in North America. Despite his power, James was not a popular king amongst his subjects. Much of the respect that Elizabeth had garnered for the position of monarch crumbled under James's rule. Queen Victoria, 1837 to 1901. When Victoria came to the throne, the British Empire was already vast. Britain governed Canada, New Zealand, Australia, large areas of India, and small parts of South America and Africa. Upon her ascension, the British Empire was around 2 million square miles. 25 years into Victoria's reign, it stood at 9.5 million. Despite this widespread empire, the monarch of England had never been an emperor and was instead more of a figurehead. Victoria shared her power with Parliament, and although the direct political power was moving away from the royals during Victoria's reign, she still had a powerful influence over her politicians. In an attempt to sweeten the relationship between Britain and India, Victoria's 7th Prime Minister, Benjamin Disraeli, suggested that she take on the title of Empress of India in 1877. Victoria took this new appointment very seriously, wanting to learn more about the country. She promoted one of her Indian servants, Abdul Karim, to the role of Munshi, or teacher. Karim lived in the palace with his wife and family and introduced Victoria to Urdu phrases, Indian issues, and foods such as curry. Victoria learning some Urdu is even more impressive when you consider many of the first kings of England didn't even bother to learn English. Victoria's power came with her longevity, and her reign covered a period of industrial expansion and economic progress. Although the position of monarch moved to a more constitutional role during the Victorian era, it may have been this shrewd move that allowed her to avoid the fate of the French royals. George V, 1910 to 1936. On George's coronation, he became the King of England and Emperor of India, and he was the only monarch who held the title to visit the country. While his immediate successor, Edward VIII, was the Emperor of India, his successor, George VI, was not. This is because India and Pakistan gained their independence. George V won the respect of his people during World War I, visiting troops, including wounded soldiers in hospitals. Due to anti-German sentiments, he adopted the name Windsor, changing it from Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. George V could be said to be the last powerful royal, as after World War I, Britain was unable to hold on to its empire due to the financial implications and the outcome of the war. The Treaty of Versailles was based on the right to rule yourself, which Britain could not support while maintaining an empire. Independence movements rose in Ireland and India, and in 1926, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa gained more autonomy. The power of the British royals was waning. The position had become a constitutional figurehead rather than wield any real political power, and now the British Empire was dissolving. Although the power of the royals was all but gone, they still live a very privileged life. Queen Elizabeth II is thought to have a personal wealth of around $530 million. Every year, the Queen receives a payment from the UK government called a sovereign grant, which in 2021 was set at 85.9 million British pounds, which is nearly 113 million in US dollars. The Queen also has a private income called the Privy Purse from one of her many private estates. In all, the current Queen and her family enjoy a rather comfortable lifestyle without the pressure of wielding any decision-making power. Did you agree with our picks for the top 8 powerful kings and queens of England? Let us know in the comments below. We hope you enjoyed our video, Top 8 Powerful Kings and Queens of England. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this. Also, grab your free mythology bundle ebook while it's still available. All links are in the description.